Susan Boyle's story begins quietly, far from flashing lights or grand expectations. She was born on April 1st, 1961, in a small hospital in West Lothian, Scotland, the youngest of 9 children, in a working-class family, living in Blackburn near Bathgate. From the very beginning, life placed heavy labels on her. Complications at birth led doctors to assume she had lasting cognitive damage, a judgment that followed her into childhood, school, and adulthood. Teachers treated her as limited, classmates mocked her, and Susan grew up believing she was somehow broken. That belief shaped her confidence, her relationships, and her dreams, even as a powerful singing voice quietly lived inside her. A childhood marked by fear and isolation. Home was not a refuge for Susan. Her father, a World War II veteran, returned from war deeply scarred, and the household carried an undercurrent of fear. Susan often became the focus of his anger, absorbing emotional and physical pain she struggled to understand. School offered no relief. She was bullied relentlessly, teased for her seizures, her mannerisms, and her quiet nature. Teachers lacked patience and understanding, and discipline crossed into cruelty. Yet within this harsh environment, Susan developed resilience. Music became her escape, a private sanctuary where judgment faded and emotion could breathe. The long shadow of a misdiagnosis. For most of her life, Susan believed the story others told her, that she was slow, damaged, incapable of more. It wasn't until her early 50s that a specialist finally gave her the truth. She was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and her intelligence tested above average. The revelation was both shocking and liberating. Suddenly, decades of struggle made sense. Her difficulties were not failures, but differences. This understanding allowed Susan, at last, to see herself with compassion rather than shame. Love interrupted and trust broken. Susan's first experience of love carried a rare sense of hope. For the first time, she felt seen and valued, imagining a future that included companionship and emotional safety. That hope was taken from her quietly and without her consent. Her father, believing he was protecting her, intervened behind her back and ended the relationship. Susan was left confused and heartbroken, unable to understand why something that brought her joy could be taken away so easily. The loss went far beyond that single relationship. It planted a deep fear of vulnerability and taught her that trust could be fragile and temporary. From that point on, love no longer felt safe. Instead of comfort, it became tied to loss, control, and powerlessness, shaping how guarded she would remain for many years. A life of duty and sacrifice. As Susan's siblings moved forward with marriages, children, and careers, her life took a different path. She stayed in the family home, becoming the primary caregiver for her parents, especially her mother, Bridget. This role was rooted in love and loyalty, but it came at a cost. Susan's days revolved around responsibility, routine, and care, leaving little room for personal dreams or independence. The walls of the small council house became the boundaries of her world. While others built new lives, Susan quietly put her own ambitions on hold. She did not resent her parents, but the isolation slowly settled in. Her devotion was sincere, yet it delayed her chance to discover who she might have been beyond duty. Early attempts and quiet rejections. Despite everything, Susan never abandoned music. Singing was her refuge, the one place where she felt whole. She joined local choirs, sang in churches, and performed in small community venues, pouring emotion into every note. She auditioned for television shows, recorded demo tapes, and sent them to record labels, believing that if someone just listened, They would understand. No replies came. Each unanswered letter felt like confirmation of her deepest fears, that her voice did not matter. Still, she continued. Music was not about recognition for Susan. It was survival. Even when the world stayed silent, singing allowed her to express what words never could. Grief that silenced the song. In 2000, Susan lost her sister Kathleen, the person who believed in her most. Kathleen had been her constant encourager, reminding her that her voice mattered. Her sudden death shattered Susan completely. Music, once her comfort, became unbearable. Singing reminded her too much of what she had lost. She withdrew, avoiding performances, recordings, and even casual humming at home. Years later, the death of her mother deepened that silence. Bridget had been Susan's anchor, her daily companion and source of reassurance. With both women gone, Susan retreated almost entirely from the world. She rarely left the house, living among memories and grief. The songs inside her remained, but she could not bring herself to release them. A promise that changed everything. Before her mother passed away, Susan made a promise she could not forget: to keep singing. In 2008, after years of isolation and doubt, she decided to honor it. With no expectation of success, she auditioned for Britain's Got Talent. At 47, unemployed and unknown, she walked onto the Glasgow stage carrying a lifetime of insecurity. When she sang, "I Dreamed a Dream," the room changed. The audience fell silent, then erupted in awe. In those moments, Susan overturned assumptions about age, appearance, and worth. It was not just a performance, it was the fulfillment of a promise, a quiet victory over years of doubt, and the beginning of a life she had never believed was possible. Overnight, fame and unimaginable pressure. Susan's audition became a global phenomenon. Millions watched, shared, and celebrated her. Praise poured in from around the world, but the sudden attention was overwhelming. She advanced through the competition, delivering powerful performances, until the final brought an unexpected loss. Though she accepted it graciously, the emotional toll was heavy. Exhaustion and pressure pushed her to a breaking point, revealing the fragile human cost of overnight fame. Learning to survive the spotlight, Susan stepped back briefly to recover, then made a courageous decision to return. She joined the live tour, performing night after night, rebuilding confidence and strength. Audiences welcomed her with standing ovations, and slowly, she learned how to exist within fame without losing herself entirely. Money, family, and fracture. Wealth brought new challenges. Susan shared her earnings generously with family members, hoping to bring stability and peace. Instead, money amplified existing tensions. Disagreements, misunderstandings, and emotional strain fractured relationships. Susan carried guilt and responsibility heavily, often blaming herself for conflicts she could not control. The experience taught her that generosity alone cannot heal long-standing wounds. Health challenges and self-understanding. Amid success, Susan faced serious health diagnoses, including diabetes, requiring lifestyle changes and discipline. The Asperger's diagnosis further reshaped her self-understanding, allowing her to advocate for others facing similar challenges. Each health hurdle reinforced the importance of balance, boundaries, and self-care. Love, found later in life. In her 50s, Susan experienced romance for the first time. A simple lunch date during a tour offered warmth and dignity rather than spectacle. The moment was small by public standards, but monumental for Susan. It reminded her that new beginnings are possible at any age. Staying grounded amid fortune. Despite earning millions, Susan remained rooted in simplicity. She stayed in her childhood home, managed her spending carefully, and avoided excess. Fame did not erase her values. She chose stability, privacy, and familiarity over luxury, grounding herself in the life she knew. A stroke and the fight to return. In 2022, Susan suffered a stroke that threatened her voice and independence. Recovery was slow, demanding relentless therapy and patience. Singing again required rebuilding strength, note by note, breath by breath. The process was humbling and exhausting, but Susan persisted, driven by love for music and the people who believed in her. Coming back stronger. In 2023, Susan returned to the Britain's Got Talent stage, singing the song that had changed her life. The performance was emotional and triumphant, symbolizing resilience rather than perfection. Her recovery continued quietly, marked by discipline and hope rather than headlines. A new chapter begins. On her 64th birthday in 2025, Susan re-emerged publicly with gratitude and optimism. She spoke of new music, charitable projects, and stories yet to be told. Her return was not about reclaiming fame, but about sharing strength earned through struggle. Susan Boyle's journey is not a fairy tale of instant success, but a human story of endurance, kindness, and the courage to begin again, proof that even the quietest voices can echo across the world.